2026, despite it only having been 2 months and only a handful of days of actual car running, has already proven to be one of the most divisive seasons already. Round 1 is still 8 days away, and yet you have one side of the greater F1 fandom already writing out the new regulations, stating how the racing will be god-awful, another side claiming the racing will improve or get worse, and yet another side claiming these are the best regulations ever and everything bad said about them is false. And normally, I wouldn't comment on things like this, and it's just usual fan war behavior. However, I am going to comment on this because the issue is so large in its scale. This isn't an argument on Lewis Hamilton or Michael Schumacher is better, or an argument on Lando Norris for the 3000th time. This is an argument about the new set of car rules for however many years blown out of proportion. And with an issue like this, it is so easy to doom post for clicks and say things like F1 is ruined or going to be ruined. Okay, but how did we even get here in the first place? Well, since the new 2026 regulations were announced, they were already met with immediate backlash. The regs were introduced in an effort to get the sport to become more green and carbon neutral, which is great and all. However, the changes introduced to the engine seem to raise eyebrows. The MGUH would be gone in favor of more hybrid and fully electrical components, which is already a big drawback for many motorsport purists. Plus, the new engine stuff suggested that battery power would be more vital than ever, potentially leading to new issues like what if you run out of battery in the middle of a straight, or what if you have no battery at all? Many drivers and teams then already started to comment on how different these regs would be, all the way to now where we are seeing them for the first time. So with doom posts preceding these regs since 2024, no one had high expectations. And when issues started to arise or new circumstances, this was the perfect opportunity for many media outlets and content creators to misconstrue words to create a negative headline and get clicks. So now that we know the origins of the doom post, I'm going to attempt to create an unbiased viewing of these regulations and see just what the hell is going on. Is Formula 1 ruined? Is Formula 1 saved? Who knows, but let's try to find out. Subscribe if you're new if you can't believe round 1 is in less than 12 days, and let's get to quacking now.
A good weather for a race, but especially for a talk.
There are 3 main problems next year with F1 that every fan is pointing to as to why the sport will suck. I'm going to introduce them all, discuss why it is a problem, and then give my verdict on it. So the first problem is the engines. The main focus of the regulations are the engines and its brand new electrical stuff. First off, the biggest change with the engines is the removal of the MGUH in favor of going all in on the MGUK, allowing for more battery power. The battery is essentially the electrical stuff and allows the engine to go faster. This has been a system since 2014. However, where the MGUK and battery powered around 20% of the engine, 2026 onwards, it will be about 50%, allowing for a 50-50 split of combustion and electricity. To pair with this, new sustainable fuel will be used in every car from the team's various fuel manufacturers, all in the effort to lead the sport into a more greener direction. So all of this sounds good in theory, since who's complaining that we aren't burning more fossil fuels, right? However, what does all of this entail for racing? Well, going back to the engine electrical stuff, with battery power now being responsible for 50% of engine power, where is this energy going to come from? Well, it's going to come from how it always did: braking, lifting and coasting, just driving really. However, it recharges and, more importantly, deploys at a far greater rate. This means more power will be delivered compared to before, but it will drain more quicker, as well with recovering faster. Right here is the main problem. Since 2014, drivers, teams, basically everyone knew the pattern with the engines and the battery. It recovered at a slowish rate, but deployed at a slowish rate, leading to predictability and everything. But with this thrown out the window in favor of a faster battery, new strategies have to be created to accommodate for this. This is because the battery depletes so quickly now that in some straights, it's completely empty before the braking zone, leading to less power. And this is fine since it recovers super quick now. However, what if someone were to slightly lift and coast before braking so they could recover just a bit more energy to carry them through the next straight or corner? What if this was the optimal strategy in recovering as much battery as possible? So in preseason testing, we saw this in full display. Around Bahrain, the drivers lifted off early on corners such as turn 1 and turn 12 so they could harvest enough battery and not be a sitting duck. This also means they are much slower through there and not driving as fast as possible anymore, or as fast as they should. The problem drivers have is that they don't want to do that shit, and rightfully so. It's another step that has been added in driving, and it's a step that makes the car slower and more gimmicky. So drivers like Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton have come out and said this is not racing or this is FE on steroids. Drivers already don't like to manage a thing on the car, so I can't imagine they were going to be happy with this anyways. However, some know this. Drivers like George Russell have come out and said while he's also unhappy with the new cars, he ultimately finds it better for the fans' viewing experience since the gap between teams are larger now and the whole chaos revolving around the whole energy thing can lead to spicy moments for us fans. My verdict on this whole situation is basically, yes, it sucks. Drivers now having to manage another thing in the race will suck for them, but not for us. This is something that we will hardly notice on broadcast because one, they are still going to be ridiculously fast through the corners. Two, if they're going slower, that means racing can be more possible with different variants of speed all being at one corner. And three, the speeds may be similar to the regulations of 2009 to 2013, where they already looked bloody fast and feature some damn good racing. So again, I just don't see how this will be an issue for us fans, other than having to listen to a couple of angry radios from drivers, and that's it. But perhaps I could be wrong, I don't know. The second main apparent issue this year are going to be the race starts. This issue will be a bit shorter since this wasn't something we could have predicted. Or could we? That's for later, but basically, the cars debut in the Bahrain preseason test and the drivers did some practice starts just to get in the feeling. However, something weird happened in these cars. They move. Drivers got the revs up and released the clutch, but no movement. Even the ones that did move didn't move so much. So come another practice start in a different day and nothing changed. Now the drivers and teams are going on interviews stating how dangerous this is, since if Melbourne starts and half the grid can't go, it increases the chance for a crash to happen, which can be harmful. It's already bad when two drivers crash at speeds like 80 miles per hour. Imagine if one of them is stationary and gets hit at that speed. It's real dangerous. However, have you noticed I said if half the grid are encountering this issue? Not all the teams. The issue mainly stems from the turbo and the ICE. See, back when the MGUH existed, the MGUH would aid the turbo in getting to its optimal window in a short amount of time, along with assisting the ICE in not cooking itself as much while the engine revved to start. However, there is no more MGUH, so when the drivers get ready for their practice start, what they did before is no longer working today without it. This is where the other half, or more like quarter of the grid, come into play, since Ferrari noticed this issue back when they were given info on the new regulations. So last year, they warned the FIA and the other teams about the issue, and all of them were like, nah bro, it ain't that deep. Turns out, shit was that deep, and Ferrari thankfully listened to their instincts. They built their turbo in a way where it can reduce the turbo lag from the new engines and get working optimally again in a shorter amount of time compared to everyone else. So when they did their practice starts, along with Haas and Caddy who have Ferrari engines, they got off the line just fine and gave the illusion that they had rocket starts. So every team now seeing this are begging the FIA to introduce a rule change to the start procedure, allowing for either more time to rev the engines or to change it completely to accommodate the teams who didn't adapt. Ferrari are of course opposing this, stating that they should have listened back then. My verdict on this is to literally relax. When it comes to F1 innovations and technologies, there's a quote saying that if no one else has it, it's because no one thought of that, or because everyone thought of it but didn't think it would be good. No matter which one the turbo innovation Ferrari has fallen into, teams are going to want to add that to their engines ASAP, and my guess is that the start procedure change many are asking for is so that they don't get embarrassed by Ferrari more than they have to while they fix their engines to reduce their turbo lag. So either way, this is not going to be an issue come the second half of the season or next season at least, since I would hope by then teams were able to adapt. It's not the sports or regulations fault that the teams didn't foresee an issue that they had time to think about and time to adapt to when they were warned about it from another team. The final main issue people are having this year is regarding the overtake/overtake mode. DRS has been the main form of overtaking since 2011, and as we know, the top flap of the rear wing opens, reduces drag, and makes the car faster that is using it, hence why it was made to allow for more overtakes. This was introduced since F1 has a big dirty air problem, and DRS incentivizes overtaking in spite of it. The only issue is, now this has led to most teams and drivers opting to overtake only on the straights with DRS, since a straight pass is way more easier than a pass through a corner complex or sending a dive bomb. So in a way, DRS has kind of ruined F1 overtaking, since most overtakes are just pretty robotic nowadays. However, the 2026 regulations were designed to remove the DRS, a wish that every F1 fan wanted. In favor, there is the battery now, which as we discussed, deploys so much more power through everywhere on the track, not just the straights. However, there is more, and this is the main issue. There is now boost and overtake mode. Boost mode, god what a stupid name, allows the drivers to deploy maximum battery power power, so the battery on steroids. Overtake mode deploys a small amount of battery, around 0.5 megajoules of power on the straights when the car behind is attacking the car ahead when they are 1 second apart. Pair this with the active arrow introduced, which changes depending if the drivers are on straights or corners, and yeah, this is sounding oddly familiar, isn't it? Overtake mode in fairness is available at every straight along with the active arrow, whereas DRS was not, but how exactly does this change the DRS style of overtakes? Well, there is way more power and speed being delivered now, but the issue is, what if it's too much? What if you're gaining so much speed behind the car you are attacking that once you pull out to complete the overtake, you hit a wall of force that slows you back down immediately because you use too much battery? Well, then you just wait till the other car is out of their battery and then complete the overtake, but now you and the other car through some corners, charge your battery, and attack again on a different straight. We are now in a cycle of pass repass on straights, and the question is this better or just more of the same? Well, my verdict is, who the hell knows, man? This is all hypotheticals. The overtakes we have seen at the Bahrain test are by no means a reliable thing to go off of. Drivers in the test aren't exactly going to be racing with their heart and pride on the line since it's literally a test. If they crash, well shit, they drain the team's resources and potentially take them out of running for the weekend for literally nothing. Compare that to a race where there are points on the line and plenty of spare parts. So just like with the engine thing, we just need to wait and see. We should have concerns, no doubt about it, but we can't be absolute with anything yet. We need to watch the sport, see how it turns out, and then make judgments if it's better or not, or if anything I said with overtaking hypotheticals is even real. For all we know, overtakes can only happen on the straights, only through the corners, a bit of everywhere. We just don't know yet, and we cannot make judgments based off of cautious racing in a preseason test with literally nothing on the line. So now that we have looked at the three main issues everyone has regarding the new regulations, are we cooked? Is F1 actually ruined? Will the sport be unwatchable garbage? What was the thought process behind the regulations? Why does my asshole itch? Oh man. Guys, I'm going to say something that I hope you all remember for the future when there is yet another big regulation change. You are a fan, not a driver. When the drivers complain about the regulations, don't take their words and apply it to your experience in the sport. The truth is F1 ruined? Yes, absolutely if you're an F1 driver. In fact, it has been ruined for decades, even before this whole new energy management stuff. The drivers like to race ridiculously simple. They don't want to manage tires, manage fuel, manage engine cooling, manage gear shifting, manage this, manage that. The drivers don't want to manage. They want to drive and race like it's qualifying, just full beans around every single corner of the racetrack, which in theory sounds fun. And this is the rhetoric we see as fans always thrown around for why the drivers hate every single reg period. However, rhetoric that is rarely thrown around as fans is that there is something else the drivers don't want to manage, and that is their competitors. Every ideal driver's vision of the sport involves no competition. They want their car to be the fastest, full of every innovation to make their car as fast as humanly possible. The only issue is, the faster a car is, the worse it is to race. More dirty air is produced in a faster car, since a faster car means more aerodynamics, and more aero means more dirty air. Of course, there is more to this. However, that is the general way of life and science, really. So next time you want to agree with the drivers on how the sport should be, just remember that if it was their vision, there would be quite literally zero racing. Max Verstappen was recently asked if there was a race he would want to relive, and of course, he said his first win, since duh, but he also said any race from 2023 since there was no competition and it allowed him to drive as fast as he wanted. But I'm supposed to believe Max cares about the racing competition? Why not say like any race he fought with Charles, like Austria 2019, or any race from 2021 when he fought with Lewis, if he really does care about racing competition? So no matter what F1 does, the drivers will always hate every car they are given unless it's this super complex, super fast car that delivers zero competition across the grid. An example of this are the regulations from the early to mid 2000s. The drivers loved those cars because they were bloody fast, full of aero, light and nimble, and had a great sounding engine. In theory, we as fans should love these regs, and in fairness, we do, since look at the cars, they look amazing and sound even better. However, when it came to the racing, holy shit, it was terrible. Ferrari won every race, so there's one reason for zero competition, and the cars were so loaded with aero that there was more dirty air on track than fucking Chernobyl. This is why I say, remember you are a fan. Don't connect your experience in the sport with the other drivers. For us fans, the more drivers have to manage and do on the racetrack, the better. If there are less things for the drivers to do in the cars become easier to drive, and the easier they are, the less inclined they are to race each other. Case in point, the ground effect era. 2025 featured a great title fight, but little good races because the cars were so heavy in downforce and engine efficiency that we rarely got engine DNS from drivers not managing. We never got big juicy fights that weren't due to someone pushing someone off. We never got a consistent hour and a half of action. If the cars have less downforce and more to manage, the drivers become infinitely more of a deciding factor. Wet weather racing is a good example of this. In 2025, wet races were the best ones, since with a wet track, drivers must be more cautious, but must be fast regardless. So we saw some great action because of this dilemma of needing to manage while being fast enough still, not to mention how the rain makes you slower on track and more raceable. You cannot slack off in these 2026 cars like you could in the dry ground effect era, and this is exactly what we should want. Driver mistakes will return, drivers succumbing to pressure will return, drivers choosing to race each other will return because they simply cannot fall asleep behind the wheel anymore and trust dirty air will be on their side. It's going to be similar to IndyCar in that sense, since drivers there also have things to manage like their push to pass and their turbo hybrids, but also have simple cars that can race each other. We see in the series that when drivers ease up for even 1 second, the driver behind, who is maybe 6 seconds behind, is now 2 seconds behind and ready to attack again, leaving us a great battle to watch. Of course, this doesn't mean F1 is solved though. There are issues that we the fans should complain about. For example, tires. Tire management is one of the few aspects of management that does affect us heavily, because if the drivers are all on a one-stop strategy, it's so boring, at least there's no one pushing so they could finish the fastest and safest. A solution: bring back tire wars. Now, this is a preference, but if we had different tire manufacturers, just like engine manufacturers, sure, everyone would still be managing a one-stop, but at least the tires could be different from car to car, just like the engines. Perhaps one manufacturer has rubber that burns quicker but delivers quicker lap time, while another burns slower but is way more flexible. Obviously, they need to be close to one another, so one is more appealing than the other, but the point is, add competition into the tires again. It was fun. So the whole point of this last couple minutes of yapping is me saying the more drivers have to do behind the wheel, the better. They cannot trust that everyone on the grid will be going slow to manage, not with way more things than just tires. With the drivers having more to do, they cannot slack off. They must think and use their talent to stay ahead, which can lead to some great battles should they meet on track. Of course, the drivers will hate this, but the good thing is that we're fans, not drivers. The sport still has its issues, but to answer the question, no, the sport is not ruined. How can it be if not one race has been completed? Of course, it's not saved either. Race 1 hasn't even happened. Please be patient and relax. Let round 1 pass, round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5. Let them pass before we make our judgments on how the sport is post-regulation change. Is the driver's account the correct reality? Is everything I said about drivers having to do more leading to better racing the correct reality? Is something else entirely the correct reality? Who the hell knows? So let's watch the season progress and find out for ourselves. So that was the video on 2026. Man, I really hate how people can just take the truth and spin it around to get doom posts and clicks. This is just journaling issue everywhere, but regardless, it's disheartening to see. So my advice to each and every one of you, take everything with a grain of salt. Please just think critically, for crying out loud. Anyways, I want to give a quick shout out to all members of the flock for their continued support, and make sure to join in if you want cool benefits as well as just helping me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe since it really helps me out. Make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of this. And as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.